Welcome to our fun little study group for PP 50340, Introduction to Public Policy and Management.
Great to be diving in.
These are the readings from Section 08, Poverty and Public Policy. And today, well, we're diving into a truly fascinating stack of sources.
Yeah, really interesting stuff.
They tackle this complex issue from multiple interconnected angles. We'll be exploring the bold stroke of legislative intent first.
Right, a proposed law.
And the stark, data-driven reality of urban inequality.
That spatial dimension, yeah.
And finally, a passionate call to action within the very institutions meant to serve the public. Okay, let's unpack this and see what vital insights we can glean.
It's definitely a crucial set of readings for anyone looking to understand, measure, and critically contribute to eradicating poverty and addressing systemic inequities.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how these seemingly disparate sources, from a proposed law to empirical urban research and a foundational text on public service, how they weave together.
Yeah, you start to see the connections.
Exactly. They reveal a clearer, more holistic picture of the challenges and opportunities in public policy. For you, our listener, this deep dive offers, well, maybe a shortcut to being well-informed.
Hopefully.
Equipped with both the legislative roadmap and the critical understanding of the underlying forces at play.
Okay, so let's start our deep dive with a very direct and, I'd say, ambitious response to the issue of poverty. It's a proposed legislation titled 1. An act establishing a pilot program for the development and implementation of 10-year plans to eradicate concentrated poverty in the state.pdf.
Catchy title.
Well, maybe not catchy, but definitely descriptive. This isn't just an academic discussion, right? This is a legislative document aiming for real-world impact.
Absolutely. It gives us a tangible example of policy in the making.
And this bill, wow, doesn't pull any punches, does it?
Not at all.
Right from the start, it declares a concentrated poverty crisis in the state and outlines this critical toll.
Yeah, that phrase critical toll really stands out.
It does. And it says this crisis exacts a toll on both poor and non-poor residents. It paints this picture of a complex web,
Right, where the impacts ripple far beyond just those immediately affected by low income.
Exactly.
And the legislative text is remarkably explicit in highlighting that cascade of lifelong and persistent disadvantages. It moves well beyond just a simple lack of income.
So it's not just about money.
No, not at all. This isn't just about individual hardship. It's about entire communities being systematically deprived of the tools for self-improvement and flourishing. I mean, imagine a child growing up in such an environment. Their access to quality schools, to safe places to play, maybe stimulating after-school activities, and eventually to entry-level jobs with any kind of upward mobility, it's all severely hampered.
And that just perpetuates the cycle, right, across generations.
Precisely. The bill points to tangible impacts on the quality of educational and employment opportunities. That leads to limited healthcare access and diminished health outcomes.
Which then affects school attendance, work productivity.
Overall quality of life, exactly. And the toll extends to increased exposure to crime.
Which has its own set of impacts.
Oh, absolutely. Not just safety and public trust, but it creates a cycle of systemic issues within the community itself.
And housing, too.
Yes, reduced choices for affordable and properly maintained housing. So families are often forced into substandard living conditions.
Which can worsen health problems, add stress.
You got it. And fundamentally, this crisis imposes significant obstacles to wealth building and economic mobility across generations.
So that declaration of a critical toll, it's not just bureaucratic language.
No, it's a very clear legislative determination of the broad societal harm caused by concentrated poverty. It underlines the urgency and the broad public benefit for intervention.
Okay.
For you, the learner, this is a clear example of how policy documents frame a problem. They use stark, almost undeniable language to justify the necessity of government action.
They're building a case.
Building an undeniable case for why this isn't just a good idea, but an imperative.
Okay, so given this stark assessment, the proposed solution involves establishing an Office of Neighborhood Investment and Community Engagement. ANIS. That's the acronym.
ANIS, yes. Within the Department of Economic and Community Development.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenge for ANIS in actually developing these plans? Because they sound incredibly ambitious and localized.
That's a really great question, because ANIS's role is absolutely central and highly strategic. And the challenge, I think, lies in its very nature.
How so?
Well, their core mission is to develop a 10-year plan for each concentrated poverty census tract. The goal is to drastically reduce the percentage of households below the federal poverty level down to 20% or lower.
Wow, that's a big drop.
It is. And alongside that, sustain improvements in community infrastructure. So the biggest challenge will be ensuring these plans are truly localized and effective, not just, well-intentioned documents sitting on a shelf.
Right, not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Definitely not. It demands deep understanding of each area's unique challenges and, importantly, its assets, too.
So how do they ensure that local input?
Well, ONIS is wisely mandated to consult with a really wide range of entities.
Okay.
This includes other critical state offices like the Office of Community Development Assistance, the Office of Workforce Strategy, which is crucial for jobs and skills,
Makes sense.
the Office of Early Childhood, and the Department of Education, focusing on the youngest residents and their future. They also consult with the Office of Policy and Management, municipal chief elected officials, and, crucially, local community development corporations, or CDCs.
Ah, the CDCs. So community groups are built into the process?
Exactly. This multi-stakeholder approach isn't just about good governance. It's a recognition that only by truly embedding diverse community voices and perspectives can we create plans that genuinely untangle the Gordian knot of concentrated poverty.
Because it's never just one thing.
Never. It's always a web of interconnected issues that a top-down approach alone just can't address effectively.
And the bill defines these tracks specifically.
Yes, it defines a concentrated poverty census tract quite precisely. It's a census tract identified as a high poverty low opportunity tract as of January 1st, 2024 by the Office of Policy and Management.
Okay, so a clear, data-driven starting point.
Right. That precise definition ensures that resources are directed to the areas of greatest identified need, reflecting a data-driven approach to policy from the outset.
So these plans aren't just vague aspirations then. They require measurable steps and target dates and clear accountability for state or municipal officials. Plus, they need specific educational metrics for improvement and a list of possible projects.
Exactly.
This sounds like a strong push for concrete, trackable progress, moving beyond just, good intentions.
Precisely. This emphasizes a results-oriented approach that demands not just action, but verifiable, transparent progress.
How does that accountability piece work?
Well, each 10-year plan must clearly delineate these measurable steps, assign target completion dates, and this is key, identify the specific state or municipal official or agency responsible for each step.
Ah, okay. So someone's name is attached to it.
Pretty much. That level of detail builds in accountability from the outset, moving beyond abstract goals to concrete deliverables.
And the educational metrics.
Yeah, the plans need to include minimum statewide averages for things like kindergarten readiness, grade level reading, and math proficiency, college or career readiness.
Okay.
These are used as benchmarks for improvements within each specific concentrated poverty census tract.
So ensuring education is central.
Absolutely. Vital for long-term mobility and breaking those cycles of poverty. But what makes these measurable steps really potentially groundbreaking is the emphasis on community ownership.
Right, the CDCs again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beyond the state-level metrics and accountability, the bill mandates that municipalities actively assist community members in establishing those community development corporations.
So the government helps set them up.
That's the idea. And then these CDCs, jointly with ONSS and local officials, develop the lists of possible projects.
So the community helps decide what gets built or funded.
Exactly. And these projects can be incredibly diverse. We're talking capital improvements, new parks, renovated community centers, workforce development programs, training residents for in-demand jobs. Housing development, absolutely. Creating affordable and quality homes, and targeted education initiatives to help residents meet and surpass those educational benchmarks.
So it's really a bottom-up element.
It's critical. This bottom-up engagement through CDCs ensures that solutions are tailored to local needs and priorities, not just imposed from above. It's a key mechanism for fostering community ownership and agency.
Empowering the people affected.
Empowering the very people affected to shape their future rather than simply being recipients of aid.
Okay, achieving these ambitious goals clearly requires serious investment. Money talks, right?
It certainly helps.
The bill also talks about creating an Office of Community Economic Development Assistance, OCEDA. That's another one.
Yes, OCEDA within the same department as UNIS.
And it has an initial bond authorization of $50 million for its grant programs.
That's the initial seed money, yes.
And then there's the Community Investment Fund 2030 Board. with a whopping $875 million in bonds initially,
Right.
and a potential for an additional $1.25 billion down the line.
That's significant.
It's huge. It's not just ideas, there's real capital behind it.
These financial commitments are indeed substantial. It shows a legislative understanding that addressing concentrated poverty requires significant, sustained capital over the long term.
So what does OCEDA actually do with its $50 million?
Well, OCEDA is established not just to provide technical assistance to organizations looking to become CDCs, but crucially, to provide grants for projects undertaken by certified CDCs in these target areas.
Okay, so funding the projects identified by the community and ONS.
Exactly. These grants prioritize projects included in the 10-year plans. They support essential infrastructure improvements, housing rehabilitation, even facade improvements for businesses.
Facade improvements,
Yeah.
like storefronts.
Yeah, which can dramatically revitalize commercial corridors in struggling neighborhoods. Creates jobs, build a sense of pride.
I can see that.
Good.
And the CIF 2030 board. That's the big one.
That takes the investment to an even higher level. An aggregate bond authorization of $875 million through 2027, and potentially that extra $1.25 billion through 2032.
And what's its mandate?
This board is tasked with funding eligible projects that promote fair, just, and impartial treatment for underserved and marginalized communities.
That sounds quite broad.
It is broad and inclusive. It explicitly includes Black, Latino, Indigenous, and Native American persons, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, religious minorities, LGBTQ+ persons, rural residents, and those affected by persistent poverty or inequality.
So a very wide net.
Very wide net. And the criteria for these funds are quite specific, too.
Like what?
They prioritize projects that leverage other funds, municipal, private, philanthropic, federal, makes the state money go further.
Mark?
Also, projects that have project labor agreements or that employ ex-offenders or individuals with disabilities.
Okay, so targeting multiple goals simultaneously.
Exactly. This layering of funding sources and explicit prioritization criteria aims to ensure that investment is directed effectively and equitably, maximizing impact and fostering inclusive economic development.
That sounds intricate.
It shows an intricate, strategic understanding of how public capital can be deployed to achieve profound social good and address historical inequities.
Okay, so we have the plans, the community involvement, the funding.
Yeah.
What about accountability for all this? Making sure it actually happens.
Good question. The bill includes a mechanism for aggrieved residents to take legal action if officials fail to carry out their responsibilities.
Really? Legal action? That sounds strong.
It is a truly powerful mechanism. It provides a direct avenue for citizen oversight and judicial enforcement.
So a resident could sue the government?
Essentially, yes. This particular clause allows any resident of a concentrated poverty census tract who feels aggrieved by an official's failure to act to bring an action for a writ of mandamus.
A writ of mandamus.
It's basically a court order compelling an official to perform their duty. It fundamentally shifts the power dynamic.
Wow.
It ensures that the burden of responsibility isn't just on the state to act, but that citizens have a direct legal recourse if that responsibility isn't met.
That underscores the seriousness of it all.
It does. Underscores the serious nature of these legislative commitments and the profound belief in the public's right to see these plans through.
Now, you mentioned earlier the definition of a concentrated poverty census tract. Has that changed?
Yes, and what's also fascinating and incredibly important for policy clarity is this legislative change.
Okay.
Previously, it might have been vaguely defined as a high poverty, low opportunity tract, which sounds sensible, but
could be open to interpretation.
Exactly. Now, the bill clarifies that this means a census tract where 30% or more of the households have incomes below the federal poverty level.
30%, a clear number.
A clear number based on the most recent 5-year U.S. Census Bureau American Community Survey data.
So why is that shift so important?
This shift from a potentially vague, high poverty, low opportunity designation to a precise 30% or more below the federal poverty level isn't just bureaucratic nitpicking. It's about creating an unambiguous, data-driven trigger for intervention.
Removes the guesswork.
Removes the guesswork, ensures resources are deployed based on quantifiable need, not subjective interpretation. It closes a potential loophole for inaction and makes policy application and evaluation much more consistent and objective.
That makes sense.
This whole section of the bill demonstrates a commitment to not just identifying a problem, but meticulously defining it and building robust mechanisms for funding, implementation, and oversight.
It's comprehensive.
It reflects a comprehensive and iterative approach to policy design, learning from previous ambiguities to create more effective future action.
Okay, so this proposed legislation gives us a really comprehensive blueprint for policy action, a detailed, almost engineering-level approach to tackling poverty. But how do these ambitious legislative goals actually play out against the backdrop of real-world urban dynamics?
Right, the context matters.
What are the underlying spatial realities that make concentrated poverty so persistent? That's where our next reading comes in, pulling back the curtain on the geography of inequality. Now let's take a deep dive into the research. This is from 2. Disadvantaged communities have lower access to urban infrastructure.pdf.
A different perspective.
Right. This paper truly digs into how urban design and access to services contribute to inequality.
Yeah.
It's not just about what we do as policymakers, but about where people live and what that means for their fundamental opportunities. And this research paper states it unequivocally. Disparity in spatial accessibility is strongly associated with growing inequalities among urban communities.
Yeah, it makes that link very clear.
It's not just about income, but where you live and what you can get to. It suggests that the very fabric of our cities can be inherently unequal.
Almost pre-programmed for disparity, as you said.
Absolutely. The authors explain that while cities are often envisioned as these vibrant centers of consumption and opportunity,
The engines of growth. Right. But these benefits are increasingly unequally distributed. And this isn't accidental. It's a result of complex and often deeply historical urban dynamics.
like what?
Well, processes like gentrification, where rising property values push out original residents, housing market dynamics that inherently favor higher incomes, persistent residential segregation. And crucially, the paper also points to de jure practices, that's Latin for by law.
Ah, okay. Legal frameworks.
Exactly. Things like exclusionary zoning laws. These are explicit legal frameworks that historically, and sometimes currently, mandate low-density housing, minimum lot sizes.
Which effectively prevents affordable housing development in certain areas.
Precisely. These practices have systematically pushed low-income minority groups into deteriorated urban areas that, in turn, receive a disproportionately minor share of public investments.
And that creates a cycle.
It directly leads to the concentration of urban poverty and profound inequalities. It creates this sort of snowball effect of low education, poor health, limited job opportunities, perpetuating social exclusion and hindering upward mobility across generations.
And this isn't just a U.S. problem, right?
No, what's fascinating here is that this connects to a global challenge. It echoes the UN's Sustainable Development Goal 10, reduced inequalities,
Okay.
emphasizing that cities worldwide bear the responsibility of addressing these disparities as they are central to human development. The paper highlights Klinenberg's point about the critical role of social infrastructure, libraries, parks, community centers, in building resilient and less unequal societies.
So it underlines just how foundational this spatial access truly is.
Absolutely foundational.
Okay, so how do these researchers actually measure this accessibility in a way that allows for meaningful comparison across diverse urban environment, to use a specific term, active accessibility?
Right.
What exactly does that entail, and why is that particular measure so important for understanding inequality?
So accessibility here is quite broadly defined. It's the ease with which residents can reach amenities or opportunities, destinations, social interactions, jobs.
Okay.
The choice of active accessibility is deliberate and, I think, quite insightful. It specifically focuses on mobility achieved by walking or using active transportation like bicycles, maybe even rollerblades.
So not cars or public transit necessarily?
Not primarily. And that's chosen for two main reasons. First, many cities globally, especially in developing regions, lack reasonable public transportation systems.
Right.
And society often presupposes participation through private modes like cars. So by focusing on active accessibility, the researchers can facilitate a more equitable comparison across diverse urban regions, not just car-dependent ones.
That makes sense for global comparisons. What's the second reason?
Second, it aligns directly with global policy efforts that are actively promoting more active transportation in cities, things like complete street initiatives. It promotes healthier, more sustainable urban living.
Okay, so how do they quantify it? What amenities are they looking at?
They quantify this by classifying over 50 types of urban amenities into 7 key categories.
7 categories, what are they?
Mobility, active living, entertainment, food choices, community space, education, and health and well-being.
That sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is, and these categories aren't arbitrary. They're carefully derived from considering Maslow's hierarchy of needs, ensuring basic human requirements are covered, and from the broader attributes of functional, livable urban spaces.
So things like public health, food security.
Cultural capital, social cohesion, exactly. This comprehensive classification allows for a nuanced understanding of how different types of access contribute to overall urban quality of life.
It gives a granular view.
Right, a granular view of how deprivation in one area, say food choices, can compound issues in another, like health.
All right, let's turn to the data now. This is where it gets really interesting. The study found a universal pattern across all 54 cities they looked at.
Regardless of geography or politics.
Yeah. Accessibility followed a log normal distribution, or Zipf's law.
Okay, what's the significance of that finding for our understanding of urban inequality? This isn't just a statistical curiosity, is it?
No, it's a profound, almost chilling insight into how cities tend to grow. This scale-free nature suggests that inequalities in accessibility appear proportional to growth processes in these cities.
Proportional to growth, meaning?
Think of it like wealth distribution. You have a few billionaires, a lot of people with average wealth, and then a very long tail of people with very little. Zipf's law suggests accessibility in cities operates on a similar principle.
So a few areas are incredibly well served.
But most struggle, and this pattern is remarkably universal.
Yeah.
Essentially, it means that unchecked urban growth, left to its own devices, inherently entrenches inequality.
Wow. So our cities are almost pre-programmed to create divides.
By their very design and development patterns, often yes.
Yeah.
Pre-programmed to create a few areas of extreme access, while the vast majority struggle with lower levels, indicating deeply stratified urban communities. That's stark. What about population? How does that fit in?
Well, when they look at the cumulative population proportion versus accessibility, they found a striking pattern, especially in many North American cities.
Like Houston and Seattle, they mean.
Right. In those cities, even though there might be a large number of spatial units, geographic areas that individually have high accessibility scores, the majority of the population actually resides in areas with low accessibility.
So the good access isn't where most people live.
Exactly. For Houston and Seattle, a staggering 90% of the population lives in areas with an accessibility score of less than 0.3 on their scale of 0 to 1.
90%. That's a stark indicator that accessibility benefits only a small fraction of residents, creates literal divides in opportunity.
It really does. In contrast, cities like Zurich come closer to an ideal sigmoid curve benchmark.
What's that?
It represents a hypothetical scenario where 50% of the population would have at least an accessibility score of 0.5. No city perfectly resembles this ideal, which highlights the universal challenge of equitable access.
But some are doing better.
Some are clearly doing better at spreading opportunity, yes.
That's a powerful way to visualize the problem. They even categorize cities into 4 quadrants based on this relationship between accessibility and population density. That seems incredibly useful for policymakers. Can you give us a quick run-through?
Certainly. This quadrant framework is a useful tool for decision makers to quickly grasp their city's unique challenges and where to focus efforts.
Okay, quadrant 1.
Quadrant 1, Q1, represents cities where many spatial units have high accessibility scores, but the majority of the population is concentrated in spatial units with lower accessibility.
Like Amsterdam, they say.
Amsterdam is the example given, where its city center has very high access due to tourism, but residential areas have relatively lower access, even if their absolute access is better than other cities globally. This scenario is apparently rare.
Okay, quadrant 2.
Quadrant 2, Q2. This is common for many U.S. cities like Los Angeles, Houston, or Seattle. Here, a large number of spatial units have low accessibility scores, and the majority of the population is also concentrated in these low accessibility areas.
So low access and lots of people living there.
Exactly. This clearly reflects the car-dependent cultures and low-density suburban sprawl prevalent in many American urban regions. Public transport is scarce or poorly evolved, leaving residents isolated from opportunities.
Quadrant 3.
Quadrant 3, Q3. These cities provide highly accessible amenities to their most dense regions, with limited pockets of less accessible urban areas. They might, however, inadvertently undervalue or underinvest in less dense areas, potentially neglecting communities on the periphery.
All right, and quadrant 4.
Quadrant 4, Q4. Here, both low and high-density spatial units tend to have higher levels of access, but the cities might be more sprawled overall, with some regions where access is still low.
So this framework helps visualize this specific challenge.
Exactly. Helps decision makers visualize their city's specific challenges and identify areas for targeted intervention, moving beyond a single aggregated accessibility score to a more nuanced understanding of urban dynamics and population distribution.
Okay, so beyond just the general population distribution, the paper then clusters households into urban profiles based on socioeconomic attributes.
Right, adding another layer of analysis.
Using Chicago as an example, they found that the most disadvantaged group was 27% less accessible than the least disadvantaged group. That's a concrete, shocking number.
It really is.
It shows the deep systemic nature of these urban inequalities.
It is indeed a critical finding. It quantitatively confirms the insidious nature of structural inequalities embedded within urban design.
How do they define those profiles?
They used consensus clustering to group households by socioeconomic attributes, things like income, ethnicity, or minority status, education level, unemployment rates. In Chicago, they identified 5 urban profiles: low-income mixed, LEMX, low-income minority, LEM, medium-income white, MIW, high-income white, HIW, and medium-income white suburban, MIW suburban.
And the limb group was the most disadvantaged.
Yes, the low-income minority group in Chicago, characterized by the lowest income levels, highest percentage of visible minorities, lowest university education, and highest unemployment rates. This group consistently had the least median accessibility.
And that 27% less access compared to the high-income white group.
That isn't just a number, it's a stark quantitative measure of the compounded disparity they face.
And this pattern held true elsewhere.
Yes, for a majority of the North American cities studied, it indicates a systemic issue, not just an isolated one in Chicago.
Did they look at types of amenities? Was the disparity worse for certain things?
Yes, they did. When they disaggregated accessibility by amenity type, the highest degrees of inequality in Chicago were found in access to food choices, entertainment, active living, and health and well-being.
So basic needs and quality of life things.
Exactly. This isn't just an inconvenience. It has serious, well-documented societal impacts.
Like the food insecurity example.
Precisely. The paper cites a study in Philadelphia which found a direct link between very difficult access to fruits and vegetables and higher rates of food insecurity.
Which then perpetuates other inequalities.
Like poor health outcomes, reduced educational attainment. It means that if you're in a disadvantaged community, you're not just struggling with income.
Right.
You're also struggling with basic, everyday access to healthy food, places to exercise, opportunities for social engagement, even quality health care. All of which compounds the problem of poverty and entrenches it across generations.
So what does this all mean for those trying to address these issues, especially thinking back to that proposed legislation we just discussed earlier? How can this research meaningfully inform practical policy and ensure our efforts are actually effective?
Well, this research provides a truly holistic, reproducible framework for municipalities worldwide to understand and, importantly, redress inequalities in access to infrastructure.
Reproducible, meaning other cities can use it.
Yes, and adaptable. Its modular nature means cities aren't stuck with a rigid model. They can adjust the weights they attribute to different amenity categories based on local values and needs.
So they can tailor it.
They can tailor it, which is crucial because what constitutes essential access might vary from community to community. The framework supports incorporating public participation methods to decipher those nuanced community needs.
Okay.
But the core message is clear. Existing accessibility policies, even those aimed at improvement, must be more ambitious and critically informed by this kind of data.
Because the gap persists.
The persistent gap in access, even with policies in place, indicates that de facto processes of urban change-like gentrification and housing market dynamics, and even de jure policies, whether historically discriminatory government actions like redlining or modern utilitarian approaches that maybe prioritize efficiency over equity and thus overlook marginalized groups, they continue to perpetuate social inequalities. It strongly suggests that legislative efforts like the one we reviewed earlier, with its explicit focus on eradicating concentrated poverty and improving infrastructure, are not just helpful but absolutely essential to counteract these deep-seated, spatially determined disparities.
So the research provides the why and the where for the policy what?
Beautifully put. This research doesn't just describe the problem, it gives policymakers the empirical tools to target interventions effectively, ensuring that resources are deployed where they can have the most profound impact on people's lives.
That's a powerful connection. From the hard data of urban infrastructure to the urgent need for comprehensive legislative action. Okay, we've explored policy intent and the research illustrating spatial inequality. But what about the people? The people who are on the front lines implementing these policies and working to achieve social equity in practice. Our final source shines a crucial light on the role of public administration itself. Our third source, 3 Social Equity in Public Administration - a call to action.pdf, brings us directly into the heart of public policy and management.
Yeah, this one's foundational.
It argues that social equity needs to be a core foundational principle, not just an aspiration or an add-on. It's a powerful reminder that even the best policies rely on committed and well-prepared people. And the article opens by stating that public sector inequities abound, abound, across so many areas we care about: education, health, housing, environmental justice, even the criminal justice system.
Yeah, it's a sobering start.
It seems like despite decades of effort, systemic inequities persist. Why do you think this continues to be such an enduring challenge? Is it just too deeply baked in?
That's a critical question, and the article really drives home the point that, yes, in many ways it is deeply baked in. Despite decades of effort and various policies designed to promote equity, systemic inequities persist across the public sector because they are embedded in structures and practices, not just individual biases.
Can you give an example from the article?
Sure. In education, for example, the article points to clear disparities in academic achievement, student discipline rates, and even teacher perceptions and expectations of student capabilities, all of which are often influenced by a student's race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or gender identity.
And these aren't just isolated incidents.
No, they are patterns that lead to vastly different educational pathways. Or think about healthcare. It's about deeply unequal health outcomes and quality of care, frequently stemming from sociocultural barriers within the healthcare system itself, not just individual interactions.
Like access to preventative care.
Or culturally competent providers, exactly. We see disproportionate access. And in housing, it's not just about access to affordable homes, but also how public opposition and perceptions of affordable housing can be impacted by race and socioeconomic status. The article even highlights how police activity, like higher stops and arrests, can be influenced by race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status within public housing contexts, creating a justice system that isn't equitable in its application.
So it permeates everything.
Pretty much. What's more, even when we look at representation in government, the diversity of public employees, the article points out that while aggregate numbers might seem proportional in some cases, there are still significant discrepancies in inclusion, compensation, retention, and promotion for women and people of color within different levels and areas of government.
So just having diverse numbers isn't enough.
Exactly. It highlights that simply having diverse numbers doesn't automatically mean equity is achieved. True equity requires full, meaningful participation and fair treatment at every stage of professional life and public service delivery.
Okay, so the article traces this historical journey of social equity in public administration. It starts from the first Minnowbrook Conference back in 1968.
A landmark moment.
Where social equity was first argued to be a third pillar of the discipline, alongside efficiency and economy. Then it unpacks 3 primary policy initiatives: non-discrimination, affirmative action, and diversity management.
Right.
It really shows how our understanding and our policy tools have evolved or maybe shifted over time.
This historical perspective is absolutely crucial for understanding the current landscape and why we're still grappling with these issues today. Non-discrimination efforts, largely beginning with the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
The goal was equality of opportunity.
Essentially, yes. Aiming for equality of opportunity. The idea was to remove overt barriers and treat everyone equally.
But that wasn't enough.
It quickly became evident that simply removing barriers wasn't enough to correct historical disadvantages or produce diverse workforces. So affirmative action emerged, particularly with the 1972 Equal Employment Opportunity Act and the 1978 Civil Service Reform Act.
And this was more proactive.
Much more proactive. This initiative often included numerical goals and aimed for equality of results.
Equality of results, that's a key difference.
A very key difference. The explicit goal of the CSRA, for instance, was a federal workforce reflective of the nation's diversity, pushing for tangible increases in representation for underrepresented groups.
Okay, so then came diversity management.
Right. Introduced in the late 1980s, this shifted the focus again. Propelled partly by projections of change in workforce demographics, it emphasized creating an organizational climate conducive for sustaining this diversity.
Which sounds good, but
it often largely returned the focus back towards equality of opportunity rather than actively pursuing specific outcome-based results.
So The article highlights what it calls an inherent incompatibility between these approaches. Could you elaborate on why these approaches, despite maybe having good intentions, can sometimes work at cross purposes? What are the real consequences for achieving equity?
That's where the critical distinction lies, and it's a really important point the article makes. The argument is that non-discrimination and diversity management primarily support equality of opportunity, meaning everyone has an equal chance, theoretically, to compete.
Okay.
In contrast, affirmative action, with its focus on numerical goals and expanded representation, supports equality of results, meaning efforts are made to achieve a more proportional, representative outcome in the workforce.
So it's different end goals almost.
Different principles, different end goals. They operate differently. When the Reagan administration, for instance, removed the requirement for numerical goals in affirmative action, it signaled a significant shift away from that results-focused approach.
So is the argument that diversity management is bad?
No, not at all. The argument isn't that diversity management isn't important. It absolutely is for fostering inclusive environments where diverse individuals can actually thrive. But that if it replaces the active pursuit of expanded representation and systemic correction,
If it replaces it.
yes, then it creates a policy objective that is inherently incompatible with achieving tangible social equity gains.
What are the tangible consequences of that incompatibility?
The tangible consequence is that you might have a diverse pool of applicants, which is good, but if the systemic biases, the historical disadvantages, the structural barriers aren't actively compensated for, you won't necessarily see diverse outcomes in hiring, promotion, or leadership. Without actively pursuing equality of results, simply ensuring equality of opportunity can actually perpetuate existing inequities, because not everyone starts from the same place.
That makes sense.
So determining the right combination of policies to achieve both opportunity and results and understanding their distinct objectives is absolutely essential for truly advancing social equity.
Okay, moving to research within public administration. The article provides a content analysis of articles on social equity published in key PA journals from 1968 onwards. What did they find? What are scholars focusing on, and perhaps what are they missing?
They found some very clear patterns and also some significant blind spots. The preponderance of articles focused on gender, race, ethnicity, or a combination of the two.
Okay, that seems logical.
Yes, and especially within the framework of representative bureaucracy, which, as you know, is a significant and well-developed area of research in public administration.
Right, the idea that a diverse workforce leads to more equitable outcomes.
Exactly. Exploring that link between the diversity of the public workforce and the population it serves. However, the analysis also revealed notable omissions.
The gaps.
The gaps, exactly, which is where we see what might be missing. Topics like class inequality, for instance, received remarkably low coverage across these key journals.
Really, despite growing income inequality being such a huge issue.
Right. It's quite striking, despite it being a stable and severe feature in many countries. Similarly, age, disability, sexual orientation, and intersectionality.
Intersectionality, the idea that multiple identities intersect.
Yes, the idea that multiple identity markers like race and gender and class can create compounded disadvantage for an individual. These topics also received very low coverage.
So that highlights areas for future research.
Absolutely. It urges researchers to broaden their scope beyond what has traditionally been studied. But despite these gaps, the field's strength lies in its plurality of methodological and theoretical approaches.
Meaning they use different methods.
Yes. The analysis showed a healthy mix. Quantitative studies, especially in journals like JPART, often using regression analysis and surveys to find broad patterns. Qualitative studies, like case studies, legal analyses, phenomenological accounts, often found in PAR, which delve into lived experiences and detailed processes.
Okay.
And theory-based studies, particularly in ATP, drawing on feminist or critical theory to interrogate underlying power structures.
So that diversity of methods is a strength.
Vital. This methodological diversity is vital for exploring complex social equity issues from multiple angles, allowing for both broad statistical understanding and deep, nuanced insights into the human experience of inequality.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for our study group, the state of social equity in graduate public affairs education, like MPA programs. Directly relevant.
The article states, quite bluntly, that academic programs are not currently equipping or preparing the future of public administrators for the practical work of equity in public service. That's a pretty damning indictment, isn't it?
It is a profound and, frankly, alarming concern. Absolutely.
If the institutions preparing future leaders aren't prioritizing this, what are the broader implications?
Well, the implications are significant for the health of our democracy, potentially. The research reviewed by the article shows that only about 10% of MPA programs intentionally emphasize social equity in their core curricula.
Only 10%.
Only about 10%. And a striking 74% don't even require courses with an equity focus.
This paucity of coverage, as the authors call it, is deemed alarming given the historical context of white supremacy and gender discrimination that still casts a long shadow.
Right.
The ongoing demographic shifts in society and the increasing global polarization we witness. Failing to adequately prepare students to understand, critically interrogate, and address injustice could have, well, the article uses strong language, disastrous and dystopian effects on democracy itself.
How so?
By producing administrators who are ill-equipped to challenge systemic inequities, or worse, who might inadvertently perpetuate them. It means that future leaders might be blind to the very structures causing the concentrated poverty we talked about earlier.
That's a stark figure. Are there any programs that are doing this well, or is it a universal struggle within public affairs education? Are there models to follow?
Thankfully, yes, there are bright spots that offer models for improvement. A few programs are highlighted for their intentional efforts. Virginia Commonwealth University, for instance, offers standalone courses like social equity and public policy analysis and comparative social equity.
Okay.
Long Island University Brooklyn is another example. And many programs do integrate equity into specific courses like personnel HR management, leadership, or urban policy, which is a start.
But the article suggests that's not quite enough.
Right. A key distinction is often missed, and this is where the article really presses hard. In NASPA, that's the Network of Schools of Public Policy, Affairs, and Administration, the accrediting body, its standards often emphasize diversity.
Okay, diversity meaning the number of diverse people in the room.
Exactly. But NASPA standards only imply rather than explicitly prioritize equity.
And equity is different.
Equity is different. It means full inclusion into decision-making processes and actively addressing systemic injustice to ensure fair treatment and outcomes for everyone.
So going beyond just representation.
Way beyond simple demographic representation. The article stresses that true preparation requires explicit discussions of race, anti-racism, critical whiteness studies, and a holistic framework. It argues that equity concepts, processes, issues, and outcomes should be deeply embedded into every core class.
Every core class, not just electives.
Not just relegated to special topics or electives. This ensures future administrators graduate with the tools to be ethical decision makers, understand complex power dynamics, and actively combat the personal and professional biases that lead to inequitable outcomes.
So to address these gaps and provide a concrete way forward, the article culminates in a social equity call to action, a manifesto of principles.
Yeah, it's a powerful ending.
These aren't just abstract ideas. They sound like a roadmap for active engagement for both scholars and practitioners. What makes these principles so vital for future public administrators, for people listening to this?
These 7 principles are indeed powerful. They're intended to guide scholars and practitioners beyond just, rhetorical acknowledgement.
Being lip service.
Exactly. Moving beyond that to meaningful, transformative action for equitable outcomes for all people, they seek to fulfill that original goal from Minna Brooks First of making social equity a central, embedded value, not just a tangential consideration.
Okay, so what's the first principle?
1. Foundational anchor. Social equity should be an embedded foundation of public administration, not just a separate pillar alongside efficiency and economy.
So integrated, not separate.
Right. Promote social equity in all aspects of research, teaching, practice. Ensure it intersects with everything else, not siloed off.
Okay.
2. Commitment to good governance. This requires continuous professional development to challenge conscious and unconscious biases, a willingness to engage in difficult conversations, and a commitment to lifelong learning to incorporate values of social equity and cultural understanding daily. Make it a living practice.
3.
Eliminate inequalities. This demands structural and institutional changes. Academics need to support social equity in their instruction, hiring, promotion, research. Practitioners must embed it in policy development, implementation, evaluation. It's deep personal and organizational work.
Research.
4. Research as a tool. We must utilize equity frameworks like representative bureaucracy and intersectionality to inform research questions. Broaden methodological choices to include more qualitative work. Show how equity works.
Makes sense. 5.
5. Equity and democracy. The manifesto states unequivocally that violations of equity are contrary to democracy. This necessitates researchers being more conscious and practitioners engaging in equitable, inclusive, intentional, person-centered administrative actions. An ethos of care.
6 is about education again.
6. Equipping administrators. Academic programs must incorporate core courses focused centrally on equity, integrating concepts into every core class, not just electives, directly addresses that educational deficit we talked about.
And finally, 7.
7. Practitioners as actors. Administrators are fundamental to promoting equity. They must manifest the ideals of democracy, justice, and equity through their actions, professional development, engagement, and actively create pipelines to promote social equity at higher levels of government. They are not just implementers, they are agents of change.
Wow. Those principles are a powerful reminder. And the article mentions that the silence and lack of intentional action can be as impactful as direct opposition to social equity.
That's a crucial point.
It means that inaction itself is a choice, isn't it? A choice with real, detrimental consequences for communities and a professional responsibility for everyone in public service.
Absolutely. It puts the onus on active engagement. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay. What a journey through the complexities of poverty and public policy. We started with that very concrete proposed law. 1, an act establishing a pilot program. Remember?
The 10-year plans.
Right. It laid out an ambitious, multifaceted strategy for legislative action and accountability.
Very detailed.
Then we delved into the deep research of 2 disadvantaged communities have lower access to urban infrastructure.pdf, which really illuminated that spatial dimension of inequality.
Yeah, how where you live shapes everything.
Showing us how where you live fundamentally shapes your access to opportunities and how unchecked urban growth can actually entrench inequality. That Zipf's law idea was fascinating.
It really puts numbers to the structural issues.
And finally, we grappled with the passionate call from 3 social equity and public administration, a call to action.pdf, urging that fundamental shift in how we approach equity in public service.
Making it foundational.
Making it foundational, not just aspirational, for all who serve. These readings together make it so clear that poverty and inequality aren't abstract concepts.
No, they're lived realities.
Deeply embedded in our structures, our cities, our practices, and they demand intentional, multifaceted action across legislative, urban planning, and administrative spheres.
Indeed. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these 3 sources collectively present a really compelling argument for a comprehensive, ethical, and evidence-based approach to poverty.
How do you see them fitting together perfectly?
Well, the legislative will to establish comprehensive 10-year plans and allocate significant funding that's crucial to initiate large-scale change and demonstrate political commitment, that's source 1. The scientific evidence regarding disparities in urban infrastructure access, source 2, that provides the critical data and analytical framework to ensure those plans are not only well-intentioned, but also precisely targeted and effective in addressing the root causes of spatial inequality rather than just treating symptoms.
Got it. Data-driven policy.
Exactly. And the call to action source 3 reminds us that none of this can succeed without an unwavering commitment to social equity, not just as an ideal, but as an embedded, actionable principle in research, teaching, and especially in the daily practice of public administration.
Ensuring those implementing the policies are equipped and committed.
Ensuring that those in power genuinely serve all populations with care and justice. So this raises an important question for you, our listener. As you move forward, maybe in your studies or your career, how will you leverage these insights? How will you challenge assumptions and advocate for truly equitable outcomes in the policies you might shape or the communities you serve? What stands out to you as the most critical area for change? And maybe, how will you ensure that the silence and lack of intentional action that the article warned about do not undermine the pursuit of justice in your own professional journey? Something to think about.